So, how many of my goals in 2025 did I actually hit? Hi everyone, welcome back to this channel of crafting, crochet and knitting. My name is Nikki and welcome to my little yarniverse. First and foremost, I want to wish you all a very happy new year. It is 2026. So, given that this is the first video of 2026, it means that I really ought to look back over everything that happened in 2025, the makes, the acquisitions, the goals I did or didn't hit, and then we'll look forward to what we're going to be doing in 2026. So, let's get started. So, my first goal in 2025 was to stop buying as much yarn. This was not a total ban on yarn. This was never a total ban on yarn because I wanted the freedom to be able to support local shops, local hand dyers, especially when we went travelling. I wanted the freedom to buy souvenir yarn, but I needed to rein it in a lot because I've had a couple of years of building up a very big stash by going to various yarn shows and going to various shops around the UK. When seeing friends and family, I'd stop in at their local yarn shops, and I need to slow down on my purchases because I've got loads of yarn and not nearly enough time to knit with that yarn, and I need to start making some projects with them and not bringing new stash in for a while. But I think my potential problem was that I didn't set any limits or targets or very measurable specific actions for this goal. I just wanted it to be a general sense. I didn't want to limit myself too much, but in so doing I ended up actually buying a little bit more than I should have done. So this definitely is a goal that could have gone worse, but it also could have gone better. At the start of 2025, one of the shops that I discovered whilst visiting some friends was having a closing down sale, and so I thought, well, let's get some yarn on a good deal. They have lots of West Yorkshire spinners, so I can get lots of sock yarn to make gifts with. When we were there, we discovered lots of other yarns as well, so they had like a cotton acrylic blend that would have been brilliant for baby stuff, so I picked up some of those. We found some woolly wools from brands that we hadn't tried before, and they weren't necessarily my colours, but then I thought, yeah, but they're affordable and I can pick these up, and I know people that would like these colours, and so we can give them a really luxurious gift out of this yarn that it's not my colour, I wouldn't wear it, but then I get to try the yarn, right? Of course, I've not had any time to make those gifts, but that was how I was thinking at the time. And then also me and my husband both picked up some woolly wools that would have made really good like heirloom crochet teddy bears or something like that. And my husband has been learning to crochet and knit, and he wanted to learn how to do some amigurumi, so he picked out some yarn for himself that he would make this out of. And of course, he's still got a scarf on the go, as every new learner of knitting and crochet has. He has a scarf on the go, and he also still has a set of mittens on the go, which he is about halfway through the first mitten. So him getting round to using this yarn is just not going to happen anytime soon. And sort of I got a little bit yarn blind, and I just thought, yeah, but you know, you're supporting someone local. And we came away with 3 shopping bags worth of yarn, which then proceeded to sit on my armchair for so long that I felt very cluttered in this office. I didn't have space in my cupboards to put them or to organise them. I couldn't sit down at my chair to knit and crochet, and it bothered me for quite some time before I pulled everything off the shelf and I tried to organise it and tried to squeeze everything in. And to me, that was a bit of a setback. Like, it was a good thing to support that person while they were closing down their shop, and it's good to have some really nice versatile yarns in my stash, but I haven't worked with any of them yet, and I think that's a lesson for me. My other occasions of yarn buying were definitely more rational, definitely more well thought through. So we went to Northern Ireland, and I was able to get to 4 yarn shops whilst I was there, and it was always my intention when travelling to pick up yarn, so this was not against the plan in any way, and I was really careful. I bought minis where possible, and I brought like doodle decks or patterns where possible, or accessories where possible, so that I wasn't bringing as much yarn into my stash. There was a few occasions where I could get like 50-gram balls instead of 100-gram balls, so I did that as well instead. And it was more about trying different fibres and different combinations rather than making anything specific, and also having some yarn that I could make a souvenir piece with. I'm going to talk more about that later though. So I am happy with what I got from Northern Ireland. I came away with 1 bag of yarn from Northern Ireland in total, so compared to that closing down sale, this was a success. And then we also went to Tromsø in Norway. There's only actually 1 yarn shop in Tromsø, but there's a yarn shop in Oslo airport as well, which we flew through. So I went to both of those. Having a yarn shop in an airport was delightful. I always feel really scared to bring any knitting in my hand luggage because I know that airlines sometimes don't like it, but just this shop in the middle of Oslo convinced me that there are some airlines that don't care, like especially those Scandinavian ones, so probably as well like Copenhagen, Amsterdam perhaps, where I think as long as I have wooden needles and I'm not too precious about them, so I got some pretty cheap wooden needles, that I can take like a little sock project or a little scarf project or something, so that I have something to do and make when I'm on either, you know, the Eurostar or I'm on a plane. So we're going to try it, you know, we're going to try not to be too precious about that, and we're going to see what happens. But yeah, so I bought just 1 project's worth of yarn from the shop in the airport, so I had something to do on the plane, and I bought a couple of souvenir projects worth of yarn when it was in Tromsø. So I bought quantities to make a cowl. So we'd actually seen these cowls that they were selling in the shop, and I thought, well, that's lovely and it's nice, but I can make a cowl like that. So that's what I have been doing. I've been sort of putting together a pattern together and making a cowl, and I'll talk more about that in a future video. And I have some yarn that is going to be the souvenir piece. It's going to be Northern Lights inspired, but again, I'm spoiling things for future videos, so I'm going to talk about those another time. And then other than that, my purchases were 1 pop-up yarn shop that I went to. So this was in the Peak District. I had a day off work. I went for a little day trip out by myself. It was beautiful and sunny. It was a fabulous drive. And I just sat in the yarn shop for a couple of hours and knit on my Christmas jumper at the time. And I picked up some beautiful yarn there. But again, I was pretty good, and I stuck to a couple of key like skeins, and then I picked up some doodle decks instead, so that I'm adding to my pattern library and not too much to my yarn stash. So that went well. I also got gifted some things this year. So that hasn't impacted my numbers massively, but it has obviously impacted my numbers. So I got gifted some yarn for my birthday in 2025, which was a woolly wool yarn from Wales. So that was fabulous. And I also got gifted some yarn, some West Yorkshire Spinners yarn for Christmas as well. So yes, a few acquisitions, but I also got patterns for Christmas. So I teased this in Vlogmas, but my husband bought me the Vogue knitting book. I say my husband bought me this, like it was technically a present from him, but I bought this and he bought something for himself. This is like, I think, life as adults. You buy things that you want and then you call them Christmas or birthday presents. So yes, I saw this and was like, oh, I have to have this. It's got absolutely loads of different textures, lace work, colour work ideas in here. So obviously it's not comprehensive on the colour work because it's not a colour work only book, but it has got things like cables, non-cable work textures, so different combinations of knitting and purling. It's got lace work, and it's just got little samples of everything, little swatches of quite a few bits and pieces. So if I'm looking for patterny ideas of something that I want to make, then I can look in this book. And then I also got, actually from my husband, I didn't know I was getting this, and it sounds really exciting, this one here, The Fabric of Civilization. So this is a book that talks about how textiles actually was as important as agriculture historically, we live in an era of fast fashion. We take fabric for granted, and this book just sort of reteaches us a bit of our history. So I'm really looking forward to opening this. My husband got me this as such a surprise, and I'm really grateful, so I can't wait. And then lastly, two little things. So with my yarn, my mother-in-law she got me this little pattern book as well for a hat, scarf and cowl set. So they look really nice, just very simple colour work in there. So looking forward to fiddling around with that. Probably make that as a gift set for somebody. And then my father-in-law got me a little amigurumi. They're so cute and tiny. So yeah, little amigurumi book. It's so adorable. There's little rhinos and elephants in here, bunnies, giraffes. Oh, what did I see? There's a little reindeer or moose, little raccoons. So a little koala. Yeah, really excited for this. There's so many, little hedgehog as well on the back. So yes, looking forward to knitting some things out of that as well. So that was my acquisitions and my mediocre attempt at my goal at buying less yarn in 2025. So my next few goals are sort of lumped together, and that's because they were to use up some of my stash, make things like jumpers or bigger garments, and to make things for myself. So after several years of making lots of gift knits, lots of smaller bits and pieces, and accumulating so much stash, it was really time that I made things out of that yarn that I bought and was taking up space on my shelf, and also made things for me. And towards the end of 2024, I started making some jumpers for myself, and I was really getting into that, and happy that I'd finally got my shaping right and I could make a garment that I could actually wear and use. This really spurred on those goals for 2025. So in order to see how well I did at these, we need to take a look at what I made in 2025. I've got my notes in front of me. So the little upsetting thing for me is that I made 24 items in 2025. So that's really quite frustrating. However, the reason I air quote the 2024 is because at least one of those items was the whole crochet nativity that I made for Vlogmas, which was definitely more than one item's worth of work. So I'm lumping it together because we don't need to have the specifics of the different characters when we do this summary, but it's just worth noting that like some of the things I made this year were like sets of things. So of those 24 items, 13 of those items are for me to keep. 3 of those items I did make for myself, but I need to frock them. So that was 3 t-shirty, vesty things that I tried making for myself that I'm not totally happy with, and I want to rip back and remake, and should have ripped back much nearer the time when I first made them, and I could see that they weren't coming out the way I wanted them to. But hindsight is beautiful, isn't it? So yes, there's 3 t-shirty things I need to frog. I made 4 jumpers for myself in 2025, and like this isn't part of my total, but I also made another jumper as well for my husband. So these were big items that I made last year. I made a shawl, I made a pair of socks, I made lots of amigurumi, and I made I did some spinning. I didn't make some spinning, I did some spinning. So I actually hand spun some yarn this year. So yeah, that is quite a wide variety of things, but mostly centered around these jumpers, right? So 5 jumpers in total, 5 adult size jumpers in total. There was also 1 baby jumper in there as well. But using some of that yarn and getting through some of that yarn stash, so going back to that first goal. So yeah, I think that was a reasonable year. I'm looking at my year and feeling like I've not done as much as I normally do, but I think that that's a bit of a misnomer, because the last few years that I've made things, I've made lots of baby things and they're a lot smaller. So actually the fact that I've made 5 jumpers this year, on top of also making a shawl and making some of the little bits and pieces that I've gifted, I'm quite happy that I have gotten a fair amount of knitting in this year, and also have picked up spinning. And as we move into the new year, I'm going to be picking up some other bits and pieces as well, but I will talk about that in a bit. So yeah, that's my year summary for 2025. So my final goal of 2025 was to have my yarn more visible. If you can see my screen right now, you can see that my yarn is as boxed up as it has ever been. I had high hopes that I would be able to work through enough of my stash that I would be able to start displaying some of my yarn more. So my yarn is stored in organza bags, and usually about depending on how much is in one bag, 2 or 3 of these bags are in one of these boxes or one of these cupboards. And the problem is that because there's so much yarn in each of them, to not have them contained within a box would mean that one of those bags is likely to get pushed off the shelf, would pop back out, wouldn't sit properly. So it's very much packed in there, and I wanted to use up enough that it wouldn't be so packed in, and I'd be able to actually have those organza bags on the shelf. We do have a bit of a moth problem around here, so I use a lot of lavender sprays, clove sprays, and I do make sure everything that is anything that's not just acrylic is kept in organza bags. So yeah, like everything was always going to have to be displayed in organza bags regardless, but you can put those things on a shelf in a way where they're still visible and it's still pretty to look at. And I wanted to make my yarn room actually look like a yarn room. And sadly, that has not yet been the case. So yeah, that's just one 2025 goal that was maybe a bit of wishful thinking and wasn't very realistic. Who knows when that will happen in future. It's definitely still something that I have in the back of my mind that I would like to achieve at some point, but when we achieve it will very much depend on when we get round to using some of this stash. So there's not a lot I can do about that one, unfortunately. So what does that mean in total? In total, that means that my goals for 2025 were moderately met, let's say. I was more reasonable at not buying yarn in excess this year than I have been in previous years. And I have been pretty successful at making bigger garments and jumpers, although some of them do need frogging back. And then I obviously have not been very successful at the whole display thing. But I suppose in some senses I was successful at getting all the yarn on the shelf, which is something that this time last year it wasn't. A lot of it was on this chair. So we're a little closer to our goal, let's say. So yes, 2025, the year of mediocrity. So throughout this video I have thrown you a few hints about what I'm going to be looking at in 2026, but it's time to talk about that properly now. So my first goal for 2026 is to make my souvenir wall. What is my souvenir wall? My souvenir wall is my plan for this blank wall behind me that stretches the length of my office. And it seems like the perfect place to throw up a few command hooks and hang some things that bring me joy. And when I was in Scotland a few years back, I found a felt making kit where I picked out one specifically of a place that we had visited during our trip and thought, I will make this and I will put it on my wall, and that will be the start of my souvenir wall. Fun fact, it has taken several years and I hadn't made it yet. We're going to be looking at that pretty soon. But this was then spurred on by the fact that when we got to Northern Ireland, there were several things there that were just so beautiful, both in terms of colour but also texture, that made me inspired and started to give me ideas about things I wanted to make. So I have the various yarn that I got from Northern Ireland, and some of it is small and it's not going to make like a full-blown garment or anything, but it would be perfect for one of these little souvenir projects, to throw in colours that inspired me from Northern Ireland, to throw in textures that inspired me from Northern Ireland. So I am going to talk about that more in a future video when I start making that thing, and I think I spoke about it a little bit in my Northern Ireland video recently anyway, so you could always go check that out if you want to know what we're going to be doing in 2026 for Northern Ireland's souvenir. And then also when we got to Toronto, I was already starting to look out for this, because this idea was already forming in my head of, what if every time I travel I look for something that inspires me and I start to have those thoughts about making something, you know, reflecting this in yarn in some way. So Tromsø, the idea behind that was Northern Lights. So again, I don't want to spoil this too much because I'm going to do a whole video on Tromsø. I'm going to show you some of the time lapses I took. So in the next year, you know, look out for me finally summarising that video for you and showing you that, because it was incredible. But when I was in the yarn shop, I specifically found yarny colours that I could make some sort of Northern Lights motif out of and hang that up on the wall as well behind me. So that is where my brain is working at. We've already got our next couple of trips planned or booked already for 2026. So I am going to be able to do this a lot. I'm already thinking about on those trips what is likely to inspire me, what textures might come into play, and then I just want to get there and I just want to see for myself what things look like and take some photos, take some video footage to inspire me, and then come back and make something with the yarn that I got whilst I was in that country that reminds me of my time there. So I just want to fill this wall with beautiful things that I've been inspired from different parts of the world. I'm really excited for that, and that's my first goal for 2026. It's not my only goal. Carrying on from the theme of last year, we need to do a better job at using up some of this yarn. So now that I've had a bit of a self-care year, I think it's fine to start bringing back in some of those gift knits, especially since looking back over that year, I see a lot of yarn that I brought into my stash that was not for me, that it was for other people. And right now it's sitting in my stash, not being used by those other people and being in my way. So we need to use that yarn up on those gift knits and get them out of my house. That is goal number 2, plain and simple. Goal number 3 is to make a jumper or a t-shirt out of the really lovely yarn. This is not to say that the yarn that I have been making stuff out of hasn't been nice, but it has been predominantly acrylic, or it's been sock yarn that I got on the cheap so that I could do practice runs and not go straight into using this really luxurious hand-dyed yarn and potentially getting it wrong. And I thought towards the end of this year that I was in a good place, and I picked up some of that hand-dyed yarn and I started working with it, and it still went wrong. And that will also come into play in a video that I will be putting together for you soon. You will get to see that footage. You will even get to see me frogging that one back. But hopefully by the time that I make that video, I will have been correcting some of that, and I will be in the process of making my new idea that I have for that t-shirt. And so, you know, it won't just be a really negative video, but it will be one of, you know, rising back up after meeting challenge. So yes, I'm only going to commit to that one though, because I'm aware that, like I said, I've got a lot of yarn that I do want to get out of my stash in a gift knitty kind of way. It would be lovely to be able to make more than one jumper this year out of that yarn, but let's be more realistic. Let's just kind of aim for one. If we meet that goal, we can always add another goal. But that jumper, that t-shirt, sorry, proved a challenge. So we're going to take it easy. We're not going to be rushing, and we're just going to make sure we get it right and make it wearable. And then that will be the first hand-dyed t-shirt item, a garment item in my stash that's not like an accessory kind of shawl or mittens. It will be an actual garment. And so yes, I'm very excited for that. Those are my goals. My goals are to make my souvenir wall, to use up yarns that I intend to actually gift to people, and to make a t-shirt out of really nice yarn. So yeah, thank you for joining me today as I spoke about my year in review for 2025, things that I've made, goals that I have and haven't met, and also as we look to 2026, what goals we have for there as well. I really hope that you are as excited about the travel inspired knitting and crochet as I am. We have some pretty big travel plans this year, so as long as life doesn't get in the way, we should be able to bring you some hopefully interesting content, hopefully some lovely inspiration, and if you have any suggestions about places to travel or textures or stitches that I might want to look at for some of these things, then do let me know in the comments as we go through the year. It's been great sitting and chatting with you, and I've got a few videos planned already for 2026, so hopefully it's not going to be too long before I sit and speak with you again. For now, have a very happy 2026, happy new year, and I'll see you soon. Bye.